understood, because when he tries to get his colleagues on board, they perhaps pretend not to understand him or are overwhelmed by the information. But he's the one these criminals have demonstrated to. It sounds familiar. As someone who's discovered that these criminals have been attacking me since they moved in there, since 2020. It's been 5 years. We're going into 6. It's 2026. And because I live right next door to them, and they live stream to an audience and often interject by trying to address me in my own property. So I have first-hand information, their confessions, admissions, and sometimes I catch their discussions. But I don't have their demonstrations. The officer who's been calling into the live audience and telling Zubir that we have to come and arrest you now is not getting back up, because the colleagues are failing to understand why they're backing him up for an arrest. Is that true? Is that possible? Because emergency service workers also sort of act that way when I call. And it's recently been explained to me that receiving a text message saying your calls are unnecessary and you might be prosecuted is short for we don't understand what's happening, even though we don't understand it. We'd rather play dumb and not take you seriously. And yet Zubir Francis has confessed that he's a radicalist, not a Muslim. Unfortunately, most of the people I've spoken with on emergency service lines are Caucasian. So I don't think the Muslim part is offending them. The officer who has been calling in to say, Zubir, we're going to arrest you, he looks Asian. He's not a practicing Muslim. So that's not affecting him. He knows this guy is a radicalist, a terrorist. He's just failing to get back up in Romford. So what do we do? Because it is an emergency. Should we wait again until we hear that there's unrest in Israel and then find out that the girl who traveled there was in Flat 4 Oak House before, like Lisa Mandiri, and then to find out that 271 people have been killed on a plane, and then about a month later Zubir starts laughing about it as he chops his food and almost chokes while he's laughing that he killed 271 people, burnt them alive. There's an officer who has said he's coming to arrest Zubir. So is the issue that he's actually failing to get back up because he sounds too intelligent? So when he explains things, his colleagues are not supporting him? I really am confused about what the delay is in getting these guys arrested, because burglary in 2 weeks of reporting the burglary, they could have taken prints of my property. However, after reporting on the 31st of July 2025, I did not get a crime reference, the radicalists report. After reporting on the 18th of August, Zubir had been out on his patio throwing a tantrum and a fit, trying to force me out of my property so that he can come into my property and steal. Same guy has such audacity to be calling my property stakeholders to tell them that I am his wife. How disgusting. Even without gonorrhea, that guy disgusts me, and it would never happen. I had to apologize to his father for suggesting that his son comes and approaches me to propose marriage. I said, "I'm sorry, sir," as he walked by my patio. Well, he was on the communal walkway, thank goodness. He has been on my patio, and I had to tell him, please resist walking on my property. So the second time I was addressing him, I was saying, "I'm sorry, sir. Your son is a criminal. Never advise him to propose marriage to him. You need to get him arrested." Because his father knows what is happening. His father lives near the Asda, very close to the police station. So I really don't know what the holdup is. Because just because their attacks are coverted, their attacks mean that they are able to blow up planes while being in the United Kingdom. They can burn people alive in a travel vessel all the way in India and then laugh about it a month later. They can send people to other countries to go and do atrocious things, like the nurse Lisa Madiri, who works for Spire Private Hospitals. She can travel the world and do crazy things in other countries. I'm not sure what was happening at the time when she started confessing things in that live audience. Let's see, someone had sung a song, and then she could not hold back her confession of whatever she did in Israel. All she kept screaming was, "I left my eggs in Israel and I created a war situation." And she's been on Flat 4 Oak Patio to take my information, and now I have problems with my unique tax reference number. HMRC are charging me £3,010 for something that Zubir and Lisa activated against me, because they could not use my company account, which I had to make dormant once I caught wind that they were passing around my information and were going to get me charged on my company accounts. They are so expensive to maintain, and I was not going to have that. So the £3,000 is a lot, but it's much less than my company would have been charged against my property. They've still ruined my credit rating because there's so many other accounts that have been affected. These people watch me like a hawk, and they used to intimidate me anytime I wanted to open my own letters. Even going to the post box past their flat, they would intimidate me. And so when I went to hide out at a family home, they followed me there and intimidated the neighbors there until the alleyway door was inserted so that they could go in there and be hiding while they do things in the alleyway between our homes, until they found a way to start bringing their children over there and playing with those kids in a very intimidating way while they shout out things at me on cue. Zubir Francis was put there to torment my life together with Hannah by Lynette Ferrimo. Never should anyone from the Muslim or Asian community attend Flat 4 Oak House and address Zubir about proposing marriage to me or discuss anything concerning a relationship or reconciliation. There was never anything there before. So when you talk about reconciliation, it's impossible, because Zubir Francis is a criminal. He's a terrorist, and he confesses to that effect. I would never stand by anyone like that. And I'm already married. I'm Mrs. Rumbi. very inappropriate. They can't be doing a daily game with my life. They did it when I was briefly Charakupa. Very, very inappropriate. And it got to his head. Charakupa is not okay. I'm okay with it. He called the police on me inappropriately when Zubir's prostitute came for him. So, I'm quite okay within myself to be stepping away from that relationship, to have, sorry, let me correct myself, to have stepped away, far, far away from that relationship. Unfortunately, Charakupa often is in that audience, mistakenly saying things like, my wife, when he's with a lot more prostitutes from that gang and can't even make his mind up if he's going to marry them or not. That's neither here nor there for me, okay? I'm not in that situation at all. But is possibly an accomplice because of his association with the prostitutes he hangs out with, who influenced him to try and beat me up and call the cops on me, to deny ever knowing me when we've been talking, even on Facebook, since 2013. Let's see, that's about consistent with when his current on and off partner got in touch with me to forced her way into my life, actually. And that's where this all kind of begins with Lucy Chirengwa. Apparently, she was tracing someone who I lived with, who was almost getting into a relationship with a young girl who I was mentoring. So Lucy was possibly trying to attack that young girl, but then she decided to come for me instead. So it turns out the young man who lived with me had a bright future, but he was going through so much. And as someone who ministers, I guess I was available and I was always picking up stuff. He was in so much danger. What a coincidence. Lucy forced her way into my life around that time when she was tracking him. This is something I found out yesterday. And this guy's family is very, very political since the beginning of time. My side has only just been disclosed, unfortunately, not voluntarily, but because these criminals have been on my case. And as such, they have revealed how people like Lucy Chirengwa and Lynette Verimu end up linking and using criminals to come for me and people like that young gentleman to try and ruin our futures. Land grabbers, but not quite yet. But she has attempted it with my ex-partner. I don't always address the victims. I'd rather name the criminals. That's why you've heard the names you've heard here. You can see the other videos. I don't care to disclose the other people with bright futures who could be attacked by people like Lucy, who then develop the capacity of networking through professional channels. Once wanted to give up company information of Coca-Cola, Delta, to exchange it for information from another young professional who, thank goodness, saw through her and called Delta Coca-Cola and told them about her professional misconduct. So she got fired and heartbroken. That's when she came for my relationship. It had nothing to do with me. And that's when she decided to introduce Lynette Ferramo as a wife to Calvin. My bad. Calvin's not a criminal. But unfortunately, he has suffered. Just as I had said, I was not going to name in this video. My apologies, but well, victims out here are suffering. And yes, they are land grabbing, property grabbing. And that's what these criminals, Hannah and Zubir, are trying to do. They've burgled me so much, taken my property documents, my lease agreements, my land registry report, certificate. They recently took the rest of the file. And when they could not access my property when I changed the lock, that's when Zubir's name came up on an automated drop-down list when I'm the only one who's automated on my laptop. I'll post the screenshot as a cover. I have to block it out sometimes because I do not care for people mistaking, seeing his name underneath mine as if he's been allowed into this property. It's only an illustration of his hacking criminal abilities. You should see my screen flashing before my eyes as he did in Barclays. Unfortunately, they did not watch the videos for evidence. And their issues now being handled by the Ombudsman Service. They could have just watched the videos to explain the IP address thing. Instead, when Zubir called them to tell them that I am his wife, apparently he says he calls them to tell them that I'm mentally ill and they should not help me. They should close up any investigations. There was £5,014 there to recover an overdraft account and more. And he just convinced someone to close up all my cases so that they could share the cut of the money. What that person doesn't realize is that they're an accomplice to terror. Because if this guy uses money to blow up planes, deleting evidence of people who cooperated with him, it means that person might never see the money that they were trying to steal and share with Zubir, because that person might disappear. And because it's not someone in a branch, we may not ever know unless they've been sharing with someone that Zubir called them in their private time. So if someone else disappears, because he discusses it quite openly in that flat, there quite enough people for them to always be discussing their plots against who, and it's mostly against people who have cooperated with him. That's why 271 people were burnt alive on Air India, because there were people aboard that plane who knew what he's doing and possibly helped him, and so he couldn't risk them having fun on holiday and disclosing. He has threatened to kill some people who were holding back my funds. Apparently, he knows these people had a way that they could have helped me, and he often says that as long as I'm getting my own money, then he feels like those people are helping him or defending him. And when they do, that's when he will attack, because they know something or he's actually conversed with them. So he will have to destroy the evidence. So when you say you're opting in, and then Zubir, why am I opting in, and things like that. Zubir has cloned my phone and is often listening into the calls. Sometimes he actually reminds me that he is a criminal by hanging up on those calls, deleting emails, and things like that. So the same way that emergency services can track an IP address and a location, they have developed that sort of technology. We used to think Hannah was in charge, but it seems Zubir has outgrown some of these criminal people who have set him in there. like Lynette Ferramo. So it is possible that even though she is quite the villain, to some extent, maybe these criminals do intimidate her, even though she's totally stealing money to fund their accommodation there. So, what a web, hey? I think I explained these issues so simply. If the law enforcers could just watch the other videos, I think they could make total sense out of these. Well, there probably are missing gaps, but who's better to fill them in than just arresting the criminals and interrogating them under pressure?